The nights spent with my husband are no longer as warm. His touch, once urgent and full of desire, is now lukewarm, as if every sigh were automatic. It's not that I want him any less, but this desire, seems to have dissipated, hidden in some dark corner that has never been illuminated again. I try to convince myself that I'm fine, that my life goes on as always. And deep down it is like that. But though, it's not like that anymore. My name is Joanne, I'm 54 years old, and now I'm going to tell you what happened to me. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications and stay until the end so you don't miss any details of what I'm going to tell you. There were times, yes, when I had to control myself so as not to make mistakes, so as not to seek outside the house what my husband no longer seemed to want to offer me. It's a daily struggle, a silent battle. Not doing anything. Not giving in to desire. Not succumbing to that feeling of wanting something more. Something unexpected, urgent, something that would make me feel like a real woman again. He arrived almost without me noticing. A simple co-worker, too young to be treated seriously, but with something more. Something I couldn't define. At first I didn't pay much attention, but suddenly he was there, always so close, so attentive, and I began to notice. His glances at a glance were different. They weren't the casual glances of someone who just says hello. No. He saw me. Like I've never felt seen again. And more than that, he knew it. He knew the effect he was causing without even saying a word. That afternoon in the hallway our eyes met again. I tried to look away, but something inside me pulled me back. He didn't do anything, but his gaze was like a touch, a disguised invitation. For a moment I imagined what it would be like if he, instead of just looking at me, touched me. What would it be like if, for a brief moment, I gave in to that silent temptation without words, but with an intensity that almost suffocated me? Time passed and he kept appearing more, always in a subtle but constant way. In the hallways, in meetings. Closer and closer. And with each approach, the desire I was trying to hide somehow grew stronger, more latent, as if it were just waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. It was one afternoon while I was alone in the break room that he appeared. It wasn't a planned encounter, but the kind of encounter that fate never tires of putting in our path. He asked me with that almost imperceptible smile if he could join me for a coffee. Sure, I said. But his voice seemed distant, as if he already knew that, by accepting, I was giving in to something more than just a drink. He sat down next to me, and his closeness was a sweet poison that I didn't know if I would be able to avoid. His scent, almost enigmatic, enveloped me with every breath I took. And as we spoke, his words were like disguised caresses, as if, with each sentence, he was touching deeper into something I had been repressing for months. I knew what he wanted. I knew it because I wanted it too. But with each word spoken, with each glance exchanged, I remembered that, at home, there was a husband who no longer desired me in the same way, and the weight of guilt began to slowly infiltrate my mind. He began to observe me differently. It was no longer the usual look, that of co-workers who cross paths in the rush of everyday life. No. He looked at me as if he were slowly deciphering each of my reactions, as if he knew precisely what was behind my restrained smile and my carefully calculated gestures. I tried to control myself. Every time he got closer, I felt my body rebelling against the self-control I had established. He spoke, but his eyes were on me more than anything else. When he leaned a little closer, the heat between us felt unbearable. It wasn't the touch. It wasn't the gesture. It was the feeling that he wanted me without rushing, and that somehow drove me crazy. I knew that if I looked any longer, my own eyes would give away what I was feeling. So I quickly looked away, trying to hide from myself what I couldn't, but that was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. The moment he touched me for the first time was inevitable. It wasn't just any touch. It wasn't an accidental gesture or a coincidence of fate. It was deliberate, planned, and for a second I felt like the world had stopped. He had gotten closer to me in a way that could no longer be ignored. His hand gently brushed my waist as he handed me a piece of paper. It was a light touch, almost imperceptible. But at that moment, I felt every inch of his skin against mine, and a shiver ran down my spine. I froze. My heart pounded, and a wave of heat took over my entire body. I should have pulled away, should have removed my arm, broken the contact. But for a second I didn't want to. I didn't know if I wanted more than that, but what I did know was that this was the limit. I was at the limit, and the temptation to give in grew stronger with each passing second. He looked at me, and the smile on his face was a clear, silent invitation. An invitation for me to lose myself. I knew I was playing with fire. With every gesture, every word, every look, I felt the risk of falling into something I could no longer control. But something inside me was already captivated, lost. The desire, this forbidden desire, was growing stronger with each encounter, with each word exchanged, with each furtive touch that I knew I could no longer deny. I needed to control myself, but at the same time I didn't want to. I pulled away, taking a deep breath, trying to find some reason that would make me return to the safe place I already knew. But the truth was that there, in that tight space between the two of us, I already knew that nothing would be safer. All that was left was the choice of continuing to lie to myself, or simply letting the temptation come true. Still stunned, I walked into my office, closing the door behind me with a nervous sigh. His touch, his piercing gaze, the tension in the air. It was all becoming difficult to process. I stepped away from the door, leaning against the desk and trying to catch my breath. What had just happened between the two of us? I didn't know, but I knew I couldn't go back. Little by little, I tried to calm myself, but then I heard his footsteps. Quick but determined. The sound was unmistakable. Before I had time to formulate an excuse or an explanation to push him away, the door opened without warning. He walked in without hesitation and closed the door behind him firmly. I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest, the words stuck in my throat. I needed to come, he said, his voice low, almost cautious, but still charged with a palpable energy. He was there in front of me in a way that left no room for disguise or doubt. I watched him silently, trying to maintain my composure, but everything inside me was in turmoil. He approached slowly, as if measuring each step, each movement. When he stopped a few inches away from me, I could see that he, too, was trying to understand what to do with what had happened between us. It was no longer just about work or responsibilities. We were at the mercy of something much more complicated, more intense. I know this wasn't expected, he began, his voice soft but filled with a sincerity that touched me. But what happened, it wasn't just a moment. And I don't know if I can ignore that. I took a deep breath, my hands still shaking slightly, and finally spoke, my voice barely audible. I don't know what that means either. But I can't deny what I felt. He nodded slowly, as if he was processing my words. His gaze was focused on me, as if he was waiting for more, as if he wanted to understand every nuance of what I was trying to say. There was something in the way he looked at me, an unexpected vulnerability, that made me let my guard down. Maybe, deep down, we both knew we could no longer pretend that what we were experiencing was just another professional interaction. Something stronger had emerged, and it couldn't be ignored. Without another word, he took a step toward me, and this time I didn't back away. Our eyes met, and there, in the silence charged with meaning, I saw the same doubt, the same need for answers. But there was something else too. A mutual understanding, the recognition that there was something between us that we could no longer control. "I don't want you to feel pressured," he said, the softness of his voice a stark contrast to the intensity of the moment. "But I can't leave this open. You feel it too, don't you?" I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the tension build between us. When I opened my eyes, I could no longer hide the truth. "Yes, I do," I admitted, my voice almost broken. "But it's complicated, and we're at work. We can't just act on impulse." He smiled slightly, a smile full of understanding, and took a step closer. "I know, but I can't pretend this isn't happening anymore." With the words hanging in the air, he finally reached out, and with the delicate touch of his fingers on my skin, all the fear, all the doubt that I had tried to hide disappeared. He looked me in the eyes, and almost silently we moved even closer. It wasn't a sudden decision. It was something that happened gradually, naturally. We both knew that we couldn't go back, but we also knew that it would require something more from both of us. Something that couldn't be solved immediately. There were more questions than answers, but in that moment, what mattered was the connection that we were finally allowing ourselves to explore. The conversation was far from over, but there, in the shared silence, in a gesture that transcended words, we began to understand what it really meant to be together in that space. One step at a time. Now at home, once again alone in front of the mirror, the reflection no longer deceives me. I already know what happened. I already know what is inside me, what has never been erased, what I could no longer hide. The woman in the mirror smiles, but it is not the smile of someone who knows where they are. It is not the smile of someone who has everything under control. It is the smile of someone who, for a moment, has lost their way. And the only thing I really know now is that I cannot go back. Doubt consumes me, but the desire, this desire that I tried to control, is inside me, strong and shameless. Thank you for listening to me. Comment below if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive the continuation.